Before we begin, take a second to settle in. If you enjoy stories where the galaxy learns a very expensive lesson, tap like, drop a comment about which side you think will survive, and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Now let's start where the mistake was made. Rax Corin had hunted monsters for most of his adult life, and he had learned that fear was just another resource. It could be burned fast or saved for later. As his mercenary cruiser slid into orbit around the ash-colored world below, he felt none of it. Virex 9 looked dead from above, scarred plains broken by jagged stone and a thin, trembling atmosphere. The kind of place that bred legends because no one stayed long enough to check the facts. The data pulsed on the holo in front of him, clean and irresistible. Apex predator confirmed. Singular organism. Planetary kill count unverified but extreme. And beneath that, the detail that had drawn every serious hunter in 3 sectors to lean closer to their screens. Offspring detected. Rax folded his arms and smiled. Predators were valuable. Their young were priceless. Visual confirmation in 30 seconds, said one of his officers, a young man with too much confidence and a rifle he polished like a ritual. No signs of the adult. Energy readings suggest it's off-range. Good, Rax replied. He leaned forward as the planet rotated into view, zooming down through cloud and dust until the terrain sharpened. That was when his smile thinned. There were structures. They were small, utilitarian, and unmistakably human. Low shelters dug into stone, sensor pylons arranged with careful spacing, power signatures tuned low enough to hide from anything that did not know how to look. Rax felt a flicker of irritation. Humans had a habit of being where they were not supposed to be. Scavengers? The officer asked. Caretakers maybe, Rax said. Doesn't matter. Humans abandon worlds all the time. He said it confidently because confidence kept crews obedient. Still, he adjusted the zoom again, studying the area around the nesting site. The cubs were there, 3 heat signatures curled together in a shallow basin shielded from the wind. They were larger than expected, all muscle and layered bone even at that age. And around them, etched into the rock, were markings. Not traps. Not cages. Boundaries. Rax dismissed the unease and issued the order. Drop teams deployed in silence, grav chutes whispering as they cut through the thin air. The plan was simple. Secure the cubs, deploy stasis, extract before the adult returned. No heroics. No trophies. Just profit. On the ground, Captain Elias Ward knelt beside the basin and rested a gloved hand against the stone. He did not need the sensors to know something was wrong. The cubs were restless, their low sounds vibrating against his chest like distant thunder. He spoke to them softly, not words, just tone. The sound humans used with infants and animals and anything that needed to know it was not alone. Elias was not supposed to be here today. His patrol had rotated early after a dust storm damaged one of the outer relays. But routine had taught him that the galaxy did not care about schedules. It only cared about openings. His comm chimed once in his ear. Captain, a voice said, tight and controlled. Unidentified contacts descending. Multiple. Armed. Elias rose in one smooth motion, already moving between the cubs and the horizon. He did not draw his weapon yet. He watched the sky. Confirm intent, he said. Pause. Then, tranquilizer signatures detected. Containment fields warming. Elias closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the decision was already made. He activated a secure channel, one that bypassed local command and went straight to people who did not ask questions. This is Ward, he said. They are attempting to steal children. The response came back almost immediately, stripped of emotion, dense with authority. Targets authorized. The first mercenary team crested the ridge moments later, weapons raised, movements efficient and detached. Rax watched through their helmet feeds, noting angles and approach vectors. Everything was proceeding within tolerance. Then one of the feeds paused. Contact with humans, the team leader reported. They're standing ground. Rax leaned back in his chair. Warn them off. The mercenary on the ground raised a hand and broadcast on open frequency. This site is under guild operation. Vacate immediately. Elias did not reply. He took another step forward and planted his feet. Behind him, the cubs pressed closer together, their sounds sharpening into something that cut through the air. Rax frowned. He did not like variables that refused to move. Proceed, he said. The first dart fired. It never reached its target. The ground shuddered, not from impact but from something vast moving beneath the surface. Sensors screamed warnings as energy levels spiked far beyond projections. Across every feed, shadows stretched and bent as the light itself seemed to recoil. Elias did not turn around. He lowered his hand to the stone again and felt it vibrate, a rhythm he recognized. Far from the basin, beyond the reach of any weapon they had brought, something ancient changed direction and came home. Rax Corin stared at the cascading alerts filling his command display and felt fear finally demand its due. Not because the hunt was failing but because he was beginning to understand what he had misjudged. The humans were not guarding the cubs because they were weak. They were guarding them because they belonged. And somewhere beneath the sky of Virex 9, the apex predator had heard its children cry. Captain Elias Ward moved with the quiet precision of someone who had spent years learning how to read both terrain and intent. The cubs remained huddled at the center of the basin, their low vibrations threading into the stone beneath his feet. He crouched beside them again, scanning the horizon with a combination of human instinct and analytical training. The mercenaries were closing in, their movements disciplined, efficient, and cold. The kind of professionalism that comes from treating every life as currency. Elias did not flinch. There was a rhythm to his preparation, a mental checklist that ran faster than the scout's calm chatter. He checked the energy shields, adjusted the low-range sensor grids, and repositioned a few tactical drones to obscure approach vectors. Each action was small, precise, and intentional, as if the world itself could be ordered to obey a single human will. Around him, the cubs pressed closer, not from fear alone but from instinct. They were aware, and Elias allowed them that dignity. He could hear the low hum of approaching grav chutes in the thin air, the subtle whine of containment fields preparing to deploy. He allowed himself a brief glance at the sky. It was alien, yes, but not unfamiliar. Humanity had learned to survive in dead worlds, had learned to thrive when no other species would even consider stepping foot. The lesson had always been simple. Vulnerability is temporary, protection is eternal. Captain, one of his junior officers said, voice tight but steady. They're within range. Weapons primed. If we engage, casualties. Elias held up a hand, cutting her off. He did not need warnings. He knew what was coming and he had already decided what would happen next. His gaze swept the perimeter again, taking note of every outcropping, every shadow, every potential breach. The humans here were fewer than the mercenaries and yet they did not cower. They were deliberate, poised, and in command of a confidence that could not be taken lightly. He activated a private channel to the planetary outpost, a link rarely used because the rest of the galaxy rarely paid attention to this remote sector. Ward here, he said. His tone was calm, measured, and authoritative. We have multiple armed contacts approaching the nesting site. They are attempting to take the cubs. A pause, then a single, clipped response. Targets authorized. Elias exhaled through his nose, a sound lost in the wind but significant in its restraint. He did not smile. There was no joy in the anticipation of violence. Only necessity. He repositioned the cubs behind a natural ridge, a subtle gesture that placed them out of immediate line of sight without drawing attention. They did not protest. They did not argue. They waited. The first mercenary team crested the ridge moments later, weapons raised, eyes hidden behind reflective visors. Rax Corin's voice came through the calm, controlled and sharp, tinged with a hint of disbelief. Step away from the site. This operation is guild-sanctioned. Vacate immediately. Elias remained where he stood. His hand rested lightly on one of the cub's fur, a grounding gesture that connected him to something older than any law or contract. We do not vacate, he said softly, but the strength in his voice carried farther than he expected. These children are not yours to take. There was no hesitation, no delay in the way the ground seemed to respond. Sensors flickered, momentarily confused, registering anomalies beyond the human presence. Elias did not react to the readings. He trusted instincts that had been honed over countless missions. The cubs were more than targets to be captured. They were the focus of something far larger, something patient, something intelligent. A dart hissed through the air, barely visible against the ash-gray sky. Elias leaned forward, intercepting the trajectory with a small deployable shield, calibrated to deflect kinetic and chemical projectiles. The dart clattered to the ground. The cubs whimpered, low but not in panic. They shifted closer, following an unspoken cue. Hold position, Elias instructed, voice a steady anchor amid rising tension. He turned to the humans behind him, few in number but well-trained. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We protect, we observe, we endure. The lead mercenary adjusted stance, fingers brushing triggers, frustration evident even through the calm filters. They're not complying. Orders. Raxcorn's reply was impatient, terse. Take them by force if required. Do not fail. Elias considered the word force. It was predictable, a concept rooted in fear and greed. It did not account for loyalty, for instinct, for the understanding that some bonds were forged in ways even the most seasoned mercenary could not measure. He allowed himself a slow exhale. The horizon trembled subtly, imperceptibly to anyone untrained. It was a vibration, a warning, a rhythm that signaled something was returning. Something that had been away. Something that was about to arrive. The human defenders shifted to protect the cubs, positioning themselves along natural cover, creating a subtle but unbroken perimeter. Every movement was calculated, intentional. Every glance, every gesture, communicated unspoken warnings to one another and to the children they had sworn to protect. It was discipline, yes, but it was also trust. Trust that extended beyond their species, beyond their understanding, into a bond neither weapon nor wealth could sever. Elias watched the sky, reading it the way a pilot reads stars. Shadows lengthened. The air shifted. Something moved in the distance, a presence that the sensors struggled to quantify, a force patient and precise. The cubs stirred again, instinctively aware of the change. They did not run. They waited. Elias tightened his grip on the ridge, sensing rather than seeing the world shift around him. He knew that the conflict was about to escalate, and that no amount of strategy or firepower could fully predict the outcome. But he also knew this: every life in the basin mattered, and nothing, not mercenaries, not contracts, not authorized targets, would undermine that. The first shadow appeared, massive and deliberate, shaping the horizon without sound. It did not roar. It did not rush. It simply arrived, and in its presence the air seemed to hum, as if the planet itself recognized what had returned. Elias did not blink. He did not move. He simply stayed, a single human against the unknown, guarding what could not be replaced. And in that moment, the tension resolved into a silent understanding. This was no longer about mercenaries, contracts, or profit. It was about protection. About loyalty. About something older and more primal than any law. Elias would hold the line, and whatever was coming knew it. The humans would not yield. Not today. Not ever. The horizon trembled again, closer this time, carrying a weight that promised the mercenaries would learn the true meaning of crossing humanity's boundaries. The ground shook first as a subtle warning, almost imperceptible through the rocky basin, but enough to make the mercenary squad hesitate. Raxcorn's voice snapped through the calm, sharp with disbelief. Report. What is that? The lead operative's voice quivered under the strain of something he had never encountered. It's massive. Sensors are failing. Energy readings off the charts. Elias Ward did not move. He felt the vibration through the stone beneath his boots, through the air and into the cubs curled behind the ridge. The low hum of power and life, not machinery, not chemical, stirred something deep within him. He had seen many predators in his career, but this presence was different. Ancient. Calculating. It belonged to no known record. And then it appeared. Not with a roar, not with an assault, but as if the air itself had taken shape. Muscles coiled beneath rippling, dark hide, eyes glinting with intellect, awareness, and an unspoken authority. The apex predator had returned, cutting across the ridge with a stealth that betrayed its enormous size. Rax froze, staring at the feeds that barely captured the creature's form. Nothing in the guild's database accounted for this. Nothing prepared him for it. His soldiers were frozen, weapons raised but useless against the reality before them. Elias crouched slightly, lowering a hand to reassure the cubs. They shifted under his touch, not in fear but in recognition. They knew it. They had been waiting. The predator paused at the ridge, observing the humans. It did not attack. Its focus was singular. Its intent absolute. Rax's voice faltered. It's back early? How? Focus, one of his lieutenants hissed, trying to maintain discipline. We complete the extraction. Proceed. The first dart fired. It arced toward the cubs and stasis fields, a calculated shot meant to immobilize them before they could escape. It never reached its target. The ground shuddered violently beneath the team, and the dart veered off course, flinging into the air and embedding itself harmlessly in rock. Screams and static filled the comms. Elias' mouth tightened, but he did not panic. He adjusted a low-frequency pulse, creating a protective hum that pushed the field outward, further shielding the cubs. The predator moved closer, its movements purposeful, eyes scanning the humans, the mercenaries, the children. It understood. It recognized the bond. Rax barked orders that could not be followed. The The creature moved with precision, dismantling machinery, tearing apart containment devices with impossibly calculated strikes. Not one of the humans was touched. The predator's focus was clear. The cubs were untouchable and everything else was disposable. Elias watched the destruction, a mixture of awe and fear threading through him. He had trained for ambushes, skirmishes and planetary defenses, but this exceeded every scenario he had prepared for. And yet he remained calm. The humans were not the apex predators here, but they understood loyalty, and that understanding was enough to guide the predator. The mercenaries faltered, one after another, as the predator swept through their lines with terrifying grace. Their formations dissolved under precision strikes, drones were shredded in midair, grav chutes destroyed before reaching safe landing. Panic rippled through the ranks as they realized the hunt had become a slaughter. Rax Corin's voice came over the comm again, sharp and incredulous. "Pull back. Abort the mission." It was too late. The apex predator did not chase. It observed, calculated, executed. By the time it reached the final perimeter, the extraction crates were smashed, the cubs released, and the humans had moved into defensive positions that left the mercenaries exposed on every side. Elias adjusted his stance, signaling to the team behind him to maintain positions. "Do not fire unless necessary," he said. Every word was deliberate, every syllable meant to hold control. The predator understood. It was not chaos, it was coordination. The horizon shivered once more, a reminder of the creature's presence, and for a brief moment, Rax could hear the panic in his own voice. It's controlling them." "How?" Elias did not answer. There was nothing to say. Words could not explain what humans could do when something precious was threatened. Loyalty, instinct, strategy, interwoven in a bond that no mercenary database could quantify. The predator paused near the ridge, looking at Elias and the cubs. Its eyes glinted, measuring, acknowledging. Then it moved, circling the humans with silent authority, leaving the mercenaries trapped, unable to retreat or advance. Fear rooted them to the ground and the humans did not even need to act. The predator was the weapon and they were the shield. A young mercenary tried to take aim at one of the cubs, shaking under adrenaline and disbelief. The creature's gaze found him. The squadman froze, muscles locked, breath caught in his throat. He felt, in a way no logic could describe, that the universe itself had decided against him. Elias felt the cubs shift closer, the low rumble of their combined presence vibrating through the ridge. He did not speak. He did not act. He simply observed, guiding them through tone and gesture, and the predator responded. There was no doubt left. This was a unit, a pack, an unbroken line of trust and protection. Rax realized then the truth. The humans had not summoned the creature. They had not trained it. They had not bribed or coerced it. They had earned it. And the apex predator had recognized that instinctively, binding its will not through submission, but through respect. The mercenaries scrambled, trying to regroup, their plans crumbling under each precise, deliberate movement. Panic replaced discipline. Shots fired into nothingness, energy discharged at shadows, grav chutes misfired. Every action drew only further exposure to the predator's wrath. Elias allowed a slow exhale. His role was clear. He was not the hunter. He was the guide. He was the anchor. And as the horizon shimmered with the predator's presence, he knew the balance had shifted irreversibly. The humans were no longer observers. They were part of something larger, something ancient, something the mercenaries had no comprehension of. The final shot of the first wave of mercenaries ricocheted harmlessly off a rock formation, their morale shattered, their extraction gone. The predator moved between the cubs and the humans, forming an imperceptible wall of muscle and intelligence. Its presence alone repelled further advance. Elias adjusted his position again, hand lightly brushing a cub's fur. "They will not take you," he said, the words low but absolute. The predator, acknowledging, let out a quiet, resonant vibration, not threatening but protective, affirming the bond between species. The mercenaries had no choice now. They were trapped on the wrong side of a line they had never seen, facing a force beyond their understanding. Rax's commands turned to shouts, then panic, then silence as he realized that no amount of training, no amount of firepower, no authority from distant sectors could undo what had just occurred. The predator had returned. The cubs were safe. And the humans stood unwavering, the nucleus around which the balance of power had shifted. The first encounter was over, but the repercussions were only beginning. The galaxy responded faster than Rax Corin had anticipated. Word of the failed extraction spread across subspace comms like wildfire, igniting fear, outrage, and confusion. Humanity's action, or refusal to act submissively, had become headline news in every sector. Every fleet, every outpost, every mercenary guild now understood a simple fact. Attacking children protected by humans and their apex allies carried consequences far beyond ordinary reckoning. Elias Ward stood at the command console of the outpost, observing the sensor grid with clinical focus. The Predator remained near the basin, a silent guardian, its gaze scanning the horizon with calculated awareness. The cubs slept, curled together, the faint vibrations from their breathing harmonizing with the deep hum of the creature nearby. The humans were calm but alert, every movement measured. They had learned patience and they knew the mercenaries would return. Across the systems, humanity acted with precision. Broadcasts labeled the mercenary guild as child stealers. Bounties were issued, safe harbors revoked, trade lines cut. Every human-aligned fleet was authorized to intercept, disable and neutralize any unit affiliated with the guild. Orders were concise: protect the children, punish transgression and leave no ambiguity. Elias coordinated through secure channels with multiple planetary outposts, fleets positioned in calculated choke points. He issued commands that were brief but absolute. Monitor approach vectors, intercept all hostile transmissions, maintain perimeter integrity. Behind him, the human team readied defensive systems, adjusting sensor parameters to avoid false positives while maximizing coverage. Rax Corin's fleet hesitated at the edge of Virex 9's orbital path. Losses from the first encounter had shaken confidence, but pride and desperation compelled them to advance. They underestimated the human strategic adaptability, dismissing the outpost as small, insignificant, incapable of sustaining prolonged defense. Elias allowed the mercenary fleet to approach. He did not strike immediately. Humanity had learned that restraint amplified power. The Predator remained stationary, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the void. The humans were no longer just guardians, they were the nucleus of a defense network that extended across the planet and into orbit. The first mercenary skirmisher tried to breach the outer perimeter. Sensors detected its approach, and human defenses engaged with precision, disabling propulsion without unnecessary destruction to preserve life. The Predator's presence amplified human coordination. It did not fight directly yet, but its strategic positioning ensured that every mercenary misstep was met with consequence. Elias addressed his team quietly but firmly. We do not overextend. We do not underestimate. Every move they make is predictable because they operate with greed, not loyalty. He scanned the horizon, noting the trajectory of enemy units and the energy signatures that betrayed hesitation. Our strength lies in unity, patience, and precision. Let them make the first mistakes. From orbit, Rax Corin realized that the humans were no ordinary defenders. Their tactics were unconventional, fluid, and ruthless in effectiveness. Every engagement against the mercenaries had been surgical, minimizing risk while maximizing disruption. He ordered a retreat, only to find that the humans anticipated his patterns, cutting off vectors of escape with calculated efficiency. Panic replaced professionalism in the ranks. The Predator moved subtly among the humans, positioning itself between squads, projecting dominance without unnecessary violence. Its presence alone prevented hostile advance. The mercenaries were trapped in a psychological chokehold as much as a tactical one, forced into defensive maneuvers against a force they could not fully measure. Elias remained composed. He issued orders that coordinated orbital and planetary defenses, ensuring that every mercenary vessel attempting escape or reinforcement faced interdiction. His mind moved in patterns no database could predict, considering both human and Predator capabilities in tandem. They were not just defending, they were setting a precedent. Rax attempted direct communication again. Withdraw or face total annihilation. This is your only warning. Elias considered the message, then responded through secure channels. They will not take the children. You will not survive if you persist. Decision acknowledged, consequences inevitable. The first mercenary vessels attempted evasive maneuvers. Explosions flared as orbital defense systems struck with pinpoint accuracy. Debris rained down toward the surface, and the remaining mercenaries realized that their extraction mission had become a desperate struggle for survival. Chaos replaced strategy, and every action drew further punishment from human-coordinated defenses. Rax's frustration peaked. He had never encountered a response so disciplined, so coordinated, and so unwavering. Every attempt to regroup was countered by predictive human tactics amplified by the apex predator's presence. The very environment seemed hostile to their cause. On the ground, Elias observed the final skirmishes with calm detachment. He moved among his team, adjusting drone positions, recalibrating energy barriers, and reinforcing weak points. Every gesture was measured, deliberate, and purposeful. The human's confidence did not stem from arrogance but from mastery of the situation and deep respect for the bond they shared with the predator. By the end of the first coordinated engagement, mercenary morale had collapsed. Their numbers diminished, formations broken, and pride shattered. Rax Corin himself was forced to retreat under escort to prevent total loss, his voice carrying over comms with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. They anticipated everything. How? Elias did not answer directly. There was no need. The lesson had been delivered, visible in every destroyed craft, every retreating mercenary, every silent but vigilant predator by his side. Humanity had declared the guild as targets, and the consequences were now tangible, immediate, and irreversible. The cubs stirred slightly, sensing the aftermath of the engagement. Elias knelt beside them, brushing dust from their fur and whispering a single assurance. The humans had won this round not by overwhelming force, but by precision, patience, and understanding the value of protection. The predator remained still but alert, a constant reminder that the bond they shared transcended the mercenaries' expectations. As orbital sensors cleared, confirming that no immediate threats remained, Elias allowed a moment of reflection. The galaxy would remember this day. Not because of firepower, not because of political leverage, but because humanity had drawn a line, and no mercenary guild would cross it without consequence. The horizon shimmered under Virex 9's thin atmosphere, the ash plains quiet once more. Elias straightened, eyes scanning for distant anomalies, aware that this engagement was only the beginning of a broader conflict. The humans had established a precedent. They protected what mattered, and any who opposed them would face decisive, coordinated retaliation. The predator shifted slightly, nudging one of the cubs closer to Elias, its acknowledgement unmistakable. Humans had proven themselves to the guardian species, and in turn the apex predator's trust reinforced their position. The mercenaries had learned the cost of misjudging human resolve. Elias allowed himself a slow breath, the weight of responsibility pressing upon him. They had won this battle, but the galaxy was watching, calculating, and waiting. He knew the next move would not come from mercy but from those desperate enough to risk everything. And as the sun dipped behind jagged stone formations, painting the plains in shades of fire and ash, the humans stood ready. Humanity had declared the hunt. And the consequences would follow. The aftermath settled over Virex 9 like a heavy, ash-colored veil. The mercenary guild was fractured, their reputation shattered, their pride scattered among the debris of a failed campaign. Elias Ward stood at the edge of the basin, the wind cutting across his face, carrying dust that whispered of battles fought and won. Around him, the human defenders moved with quiet purpose, tending to equipment, checking sensors, and ensuring the cubs remained undisturbed. But Elias was not satisfied with complacency. He knew the galaxy had seen the demonstration of human resolve, and now he had to ensure it endured. The cubs stirred, stretching and testing their limbs, their eyes reflecting intelligence far beyond their age. Elias crouched beside them, brushing a hand over the fur of the largest, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. "You are safe," he whispered. It was not a promise of absence from danger, but of presence, of protection that no mercenary, no predator, no lawless force could sever. They responded with soft vibrations, the language of trust that only humans and their chosen allies could understand. The apex predator remained nearby, an immovable guardian whose presence alone was enough to reshape the balance of power on this scarred world. Its eyes followed every movement, calculating, assessing, yet always returning to Elias and the cubs. There was respect in those eyes, a recognition of human discipline, intelligence, and loyalty. The predator had chosen them not out of necessity, but because it understood instinct when it saw it mirrored in another species. Elias felt a quiet pride, tempered with humility, that humanity could evoke such recognition in a creature so ancient, so formidable. Communications from orbital fleets crackled through the comm channels, confirming that the mercenary remnants had been intercepted and neutralized at every juncture. Bounties were being collected, and sectors previously indifferent to humanity's reach now moved to secure alliances or to respect boundaries that had once been disregarded. The galaxy had learned a rule that would echo across light years: human-protected children, whether of their own species or chosen allies, were untouchable. Elias rose to his full height, scanning the horizon with steady eyes. Rax Corin's escape had been noted, and while he had survived, his arrogance was battered, his confidence diminished. Elias allowed himself a brief thought of satisfaction, not in vengeance but in justice. Humanity had not overstepped, it had merely enforced what was self-evident. Respect for life, loyalty, and the bond between species was not negotiable. The predator shifted closer to the cubs, nudging them gently, then returning its gaze to Elias. It was a gesture of approval, a final acknowledgement that the humans had passed the unspoken trial. Elias mirrored the gesture, kneeling, hand outstretched in silent communion. There was a rhythm to their interaction, an unspoken dialogue of trust, protection, and mutual understanding. In that moment, Elias realized that the apex predator was not merely an ally. It was a reflection of the very qualities humanity had cultivated: intelligence tempered by restraint, power guided by loyalty, and instinct harnessed for protection rather than destruction. The cubs, emboldened by the safety surrounding them, began to explore the edges of the basin, their movements graceful and deliberate. Elias watched each step, each tentative test of balance, understanding that their growth would define more than the apex predator lineage, it would define a new chapter for interspecies trust. The humans had proven themselves capable of stewardship that went beyond the narrow confines of survival. They had demonstrated the capacity to uphold life in its most vulnerable form, and in return the galaxy had been forced to reckon with a simple truth: humanity did not negotiate when innocence was threatened. Rax Corin's voice arrived over long-range comm, strained and reluctant. "Captain Ward, your actions are unprecedented. I underestimated you, underestimated them." Elias did not respond immediately. He let the words hang in the void, a recognition of the gulf between mercenary pragmatism and human principle. "Underestimated us," he finally said, voice low but clear. "That is a mistake you will never make again." The predator shifted slightly, a subtle movement that drew Rax's attention across the void. It was a silent warning, a statement of dominance without unnecessary aggression. The Mercenary Guild would remember, not only Elias Ward, not only humanity but the creature itself. Their failure was complete, and their understanding of power had been irrevocably altered. Elias turned his attention back to the cubs, kneeling to adjust a sensor that monitored their growth and health. He felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders, tempered by the pride that only comes from standing on the edge of something larger than oneself. The galaxy had watched, the predator had judged, and humanity had prevailed not by brute force alone, but by demonstrating the essence of what it meant to protect, to endure, and to command respect without intimidation. As the sun dipped low behind the jagged horizon, painting the plains in shades of orange and ash, Elias raised his gaze to the distant stars. The battles of the day had ended, but the echoes would persist. Humanity's message was clear. Loyalty, protection, and moral authority could wield power as absolute as any weapon. The cubs, the humans, the predator, they were united in a bond that the galaxy could neither ignore nor dismantle. A sudden vibration beneath Elias' feet drew his attention, subtle but unmistakable. The apex predator stood and let out a low, resonant sound, a signal to the cubs and a proclamation to all who might watch. Elias rose to his full height, feeling the energy pulse through the ground and into the air. This was not a roar. It was a declaration. Humanity had earned a place in the hierarchy of survival, a position secured by integrity, courage, and understanding. The cubs responded, soft low vibrations that echoed the predator's message, and Elias smiled, a rare and unguarded expression. The future was uncertain, the galaxy still vast and unpredictable, but one thing was undeniable: boundaries had been established. Lines had been drawn, and for those who sought to cross them, the consequences would be immediate and absolute. Elias looked once more at the apex predator, then at the cubs, and finally at the horizon where distant stars promised both challenge and opportunity. The bond was sealed, the lesson delivered, and the galaxy would remember the day humanity declared its limits and enforced them with unwavering precision. He turned toward his team, voice carrying across the ridge, calm and resolute. "We move forward. Always forward. Together." The predator emitted a final low vibration and acknowledgement, and the cubs stirred, stepping with newfound confidence into the vast ash-colored basin. Humanity had claimed more than survival. They had claimed respect, not through fear, not through domination, but through the unwavering defense of what mattered most. The sun set, shadows lengthened, and the legacy of that day was written not in blood, but in trust, loyalty, and the quiet, undeniable power of humans and their chosen allies. The galaxy had learned a new rule, one that would echo across the stars: threaten what humans protect, and you will face a force that answers with precision, loyalty, and the full weight of a species unwilling to compromise. Elias Ward stepped forward, side by side with his team in the apex predator, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe in the invincibility of principle. The cubs looked up at him, eyes bright and alert, and the bond that had saved them all shimmered in the fading light. The story of Virex 9 had reached its climax, and the legacy of that day was eternal.